All right. Well, now we're going into our MLB playoffs segment, which we've been doing the last couple of episodes. You might notice that I'm no longer wearing the hoodie because it's 48 hours later since the
And I
last.
am behind my library because I finally got to come home.
Yeah, yeah. So that's no longer the hotel, and this is no
Well,
longer
it's
the
still
studio.
technically a hotel because I have a cot right here because the kids still don't know not to jump on daddy. So
Right. He's in the hotel within his own house.
yeah.
So when last we spoke about the MLB, the Braves were facing the Dodgers in the NLCS, and the Rays were facing the Astros in the ALCS. At that time, the Rays were up on the Astros 3 games to 0. The Braves were up on the Dodgers 2 games to 1. The Braves had just got shellacked by the Dodgers in Game 3, and everyone was like, the sky is falling." So anyway, since then, the Braves ended up winning Game 4. They were up 3-1. Everyone's like, "Oh, we're actually gonna do this," and then they lost the next 3 games, and they ended up losing the series to the Dodgers. Now, I could go into what happened in those 3 games, but
Curse, Zeno, curse.
yes, we're gonna talk about the crest of Atlanta. But basically, there were key moments that I want to touch on. In Game 5, there was the Braves were up by 2, I believe it was like 4-2 at one
Yeah.
point, and the Dodgers had 2 men on base with 2 outs. Our pitcher, whose name is Will Smith, was pitching. He was pitching against Max Muncy, and the umpire of that game was like really calling really tight strike zones, right? And there was a pitch that Will Smith threw that would have ended the inning. There should have been a strike. On the Fox Tracks thing, it said strike. The umpire called it a ball. So it's like, what? So now it's a 3-2 count. Muncy fouls off a couple, and then Will Smith walks Muncy, bases loaded. Then the guy who comes off the bat is also named Will Smith, catcher for the Dodgers.
I thought that was the real quickly. I thought that was like, did y'all really have to point out that this is the first time two people with the same first name and last name faced each
That,
other
that's
in the
one thing
playoffs?
I've always told my other immigrant friends about American sports. You guys have the most useless stats sometimes. First time 2 people with the same name will face each other. Anyway, that was a battle. I think it went like 8 pitches
Mhm.
until Will Smith, the pitcher, finally had to come inside in the strike zone, and the catcher didn't miss his opportunity. Crushed it, grand slam, turned the tide of that game. The Dodgers end up winning. And then Game 6, a key moment was when the Braves were down, I think 3-1 at the time, because the Braves gave up 3 runs in the first inning and then didn't give up another run the rest of the way. But they were down 3-1 in the second inning,
Mhm.
and the Braves.
Seager.
No, 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 no. The Braves were batting, and they had bases loaded because it was Darno that got on base, then Albies, then Swanson. So bases loaded,
Watson.
and then um, Austin Riley came up to bat, and he struck out because he was consistently swinging for the fences, missed the ball, struck out. Then Nick Markakis came up, struck out. Then Pachi came up, and I think he grounded out or whatever. So
Which
basically,
game
that was
was
game.
it that
Oh,
Azuna?
go on, go on.
I so I never watched this much baseball before, but I had to do it for the culture. I had to do it for the podcast,
Right.
and and it also made me realize, like, you know what? I've talked a lot of crap about how I've never become a fan of baseball. I'd rather become a fan of basketball, but it's true what you told me. Like, I think last episode, where when the stakes there's something at stake, that's when it's exciting. So
Yeah.
this was an exciting um matchup. Honestly, look, if it went
Yeah.
down to the wire, there's nothing really for either team to be obviously be
Yeah.
disappointed, but to
You-
be ashamed of. But what game was it? Which one was it where I'm not gonna say Ozuna cost us?
I know what you're talking about, right? The way he was on third base and he ran.
And
Okay,
Seager's the one that caught that. He caught
no,
that ball,
Mookie
right?
Betts, Mookie Betts.
That's
Yeah.
Mookie. Yeah.
So actually, it's the same game I'm talking about, Game 6.
Okay.
So okay, so Pachi grounds out. So they missed the 3-run opportunity, right? Um, sorry, their bases loaded opportunity. They missed that. Then there's another inning later in the game where, oh, sorry, when they did that, that was 3-0. And then another inning later in the game where they got a run. I think Ozuna batted in Acuna.
Yeah.
Ozuna ended up making his way to third base, right? And then I think at that time it was also bases loaded, but who was it? Swanson or someone hit the ball, and Mookie Betts barely caught it, right? Like just like snow coned it with his glove, but it was far enough for it to be a sac fly opportunity. You would think, right? That
Yeah.
sac fly, for those who don't know, means once the ball is cut in the outfield, you can tag up and run to home to score a run. Well, Ozuna had moved back to tag up, but it looked like he was being blocked by some of the fielders or whatever, and he couldn't actually see whether Mookie Betts had already caught the
Yeah.
ball. He just started running. And so they were like, okay, Braves scored another run, but when they reviewed it, they saw that Ozuna
And
hadn't
ended up
actually
being an
tagged up.
out. And I honestly, I
It ended
feel
up
like
being a
that's
double
what,
play, 2
yeah.
outs.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what caused the Braves that game. I honestly
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah,
It's because
because
it's about opportunities. Look, I don't know much about baseball, like I said, but from the little bit amount that I would think that's kind of something that the third base coach should have been like, yo,
yeah,
don't, just because it's one of those kind of like, if you don't know, it's better to not.
yeah, because if you think about it, if Ozuna hadn't gone there, even if I think if he had tagged up and run, I think he would have been thrown out. Because even without tagging up, it was still a very close play.
It was really close.
Yeah, I
he
mean,
wouldn't have. I don't think he would have made it.
Mookie Betts threw it right dead to the catcher. Like that was a fantastic throw. So I don't think he would have made it. But if Ozuna had just stayed back at third base and like said, okay, whatever, next batter, you still have bases loaded, runners in scoring position. The next batter could have gotten a single and scored those 2 runs, and now it's a tied game, right?
Yeah.
But that completely drew the momentum out of the game. The Braves were done at that point. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That was game 5. That was game 5 because the Braves had the lead. They had a 2-0 lead, and they were trying to compound the lead and add to it. And then, because I remember Joe Buck saying, "Oh, they haven't scored since then," which is true. So, but yeah, Game 6 was the bases loaded one that they messed up. I think twice even. Game 7 was a really good game
that was a good as game.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Honestly, because so my best friend's like me. He doesn't know much about baseball, but he was watching it with me, and I told him, I was like, "No, you gotta understand. I think you're watching basically the equivalent of, we'll go with like the Patriots versus
the Chiefs, the AFC Chiefs Championship game."
Yes.
Yes.
Just because these two are just best, and the only thing was that that happened is, I'm not gonna say the Dodgers wanted it more, but the Dodgers let themselves keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
And they didn't lose it, because remember, they had the momentum since game 2 at the end of game 2, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of kept that going. And then it's just sometimes, man, it's just it's okay. I know football is a game of inches and seconds. What's baseball?
It's a game of at bats. Just those simple moments in one at bat. Really, it's a game of pitches, because like I was telling you about the Will Smith pitch that got called a ball instead of a strike. Had that been called a strike, we leave that inning with the lead, still leading by 2. But that grand slam changed that game completely.
Yeah. And am I wrong? Like I said, don't know much, but game 7, that umpire looked like he kind of was very those were some high ass strikes.
Yeah. And I was watching it with my dad, right? My dad he doesn't know too much about baseball, but even he was watching because it was an intense game. Like, we're not kidding when we say that was a really good game. Obviously, from an Atlanta fan's perspective, it was very disappointing. But from a neutral perspective, that was a really good game. And my dad was learning the rules and understanding it. And he was like, why don't they have like, why can't they do it automatically, where we can see the Fox tracks, right? We can see it's a ball or strike based on that. Why can't they do that automatically? I was like, well, they don't want to turn the game into just robots. They want to keep some of that subjectivity. But he said, well, but then you miss strikes like what we just saw there, right?
Yeah.
Because you're right, the guy had a high strike zone sometimes where our guys are getting out, and we're like, come on now, that's not a strike.
Yeah, that just didn't make. But it was a good game. It really was.
And then there was a moment where it was 3-3, and Freddie Freeman, who's likely going to be the National League MVP, hits one that's far enough to be a home run, and Mookie Betts robbed the home run.
Look, when I saw that, I looked at my boy and I was like, yo, if this guy, if there's an MVP for this, like the conference games, this guy deserves it, because that was an amazing play. Yeah. That was one of those, like, you're like, oh, we're about to.
Yeah. No, I mean, when he made that, because I think that was also the third out of the inning. When he did that, I pretty much lost all hope for the rest of the game. And then, sure enough, the next inning, 2019 MVP Cody Bellinger, of course, he's the one that hit the the series-winning home run. But yeah, that was the highlight moment for sure. Him stealing that home run, and then the other dude hitting the home run. But Corey Seager actually won the series MVP because he hit 5 home runs in the series.
That makes sense, though. He was amazing too.
Yeah.
He was amazing too.
I remember people saying, why did they keep pitching to Seager? I mean, fair point. Yeah, you probably should walk the guy at this point. But it's the playoffs, because you walk one person, the next one hits a home run. They'll be like, well, why did you walk the previous?
You got 2. Now you got 2. Now you got 2 runs versus 1.
So it was and I've seen today, because on the day of, there were people who were still very mad. They're like, oh, fire Brian Snitker, the guy who got us to the playoffs 3 years in a row. The
guy who the Braves didn't even have faith in.
Right, exactly. This guy sucks, cut this guy, and all that stuff. I've seen today, which is now 4 days after the fact, people saying that, having time to think about it, what our guys did was really impressive, right? Because I've mentioned it before, from when the season started till now, they only have one of the pitches left from that starting rotation. Everyone else has had to be called up, or is basically, from out of nowhere. And they took the Dodgers to the final out of the series. So
the number 1 team, like you said.
The number 1 team, yeah. These are the number 1 and number 2 slugging teams, but the Dodgers have been the number 1 team for like the last 4 or 5 years. $1 billion payroll. Funny thing I saw is this before the World Series started. The Clayton Kershaw, his salary is more than the entire Tampa Bay Rays pitching staff combined. It's ridiculous. So anyway, so
you're gonna have to educate us on how the hell the baseball cap works.
I don't know. I think it's a lot like soccer, where it's just like, if you got the money, then spend it.
Yeah.
But real quick before I get into the Atlanta curse, so in the ALCS, the Rays were up 3-0. Then the Houston Astros won 3 straight and made it a 3-3 series. But then the Rays end up winning Game 7, and now they're in the World Series facing the Dodgers. That's my quick recap of it. I didn't really watch those games. I mostly saw highlights. But right now, they're tied 1-1 in the World Series. And unlike the previous series, they actually have breaks in between the games. So
yeah. I did notice that. So,
so today is a break for them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Curse of Atlanta. A lot of my friends are very much doom and gloom, like, oh, when's Atlanta gonna win a championship in my lifetime, yada yada. First of all, the Braves won in '95, right? So that's what they're basing it on. It's like, oh, they haven't won since then. So I decided to do some searching on the internet to see if there's any news outlets that would not count Atlanta United's championship in 2018 as breaking the
drought, as a breaking of the drought.
Yeah, literally every single one I looked at, every single one was either an article from December 8, 2018 saying Atlanta United finally breaks Atlanta's championship drought, or it was an article saying cities with the longest droughts, and then they would have, they'll say Atlanta would have been on this list, but that drought was recently broken by Atlanta United. So I mean, so on that side of things, I don't think there's a drought anymore. I do think, however, that the traditional Atlanta teams do have some, demons to ward off,
Award off here.
because Atlanta United is a new team, and one of my friends made the point, which I'll take, um, that they don't have the history of that baggage on them of losing titles and not, getting over.
Well, to counterpoint what you're well, not counterpoint what they're saying is, though, is you also got to look at, I get it, we have a championship drought, but do we really have a curse when the Braves went to how many playoffs in a row? They won their division how many years in a row? The last playoff, the last World Series they went to was in 1999, right? So that was only 21 years ago. There in different sports, there are people who, Detroit Lions have been around since the beginning of the NFL, never gone to the Super Bowl, never have gone to an NFC championship, right? You got new teams like Texans and Jacksonville also have never won, right? Texans have never made it. I don't think the Texans have ever made it to the AFC championship. Then you have older teams like the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns were the championship teams back in the day. Like back in the 40s and the 60s, they owned it with the Browns, right? What happened? They haven't done it, even though I argue that technically speaking, they have, because they're the Baltimore Ravens, really.
Okay.
Historically, there really are the Baltimore Ravens. So, but the Browns themselves, as the name itself, hasn't won since forever, right? The Atlanta Falcons were in the Super Bowl 4 years ago.
Yeah.
They were in the NFC Championship prior to that in 2012, 4 years prior to that. If you want to talk about the baggage that the Falcons have, I would say the Falcons' baggage has been was shredded once Thomas Dimitroff, Matt Ryan, and all of them came, because what happened? You never had a back-to-back winning season, and then all of a sudden you went 5 years in a row with a winning season.
Yeah, and people talk about curse. This year was the first time ever that the Falcons started 0-2. Obviously, we know they end up starting 0-5. But the fact of the matter, I said first time ever. My bad. The first time under Matt Ryan, with Matt Ryan as quarterback, that they've started 0-2. I mean, I know that it's easy to look with a very narrow lens because we are in Atlanta, but there are a lot of sports cities that have it way worse than we do. Yeah. Way worse.
No, it's true. It really is. It really is. And then I always tell people, I always look at the Detroit Lions if you're a Falcons fan.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just piling on, but it's just like, I don't agree with the curse, because the thing is, though, in baseball, you said it, it's about money, right? In football, it's about coaching. If you get the right coach, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They won the Super Bowl with Doug Peterson and Wentz getting them there, with Nick Foles as the backup after a while and winning the Super Bowl. It's about getting hot at the right time. When people say that there's no dynasty in football minus the Patriots, and that was just because Bill Belichick is just a once in a lifetime type of genius when it comes to building a team, right?
Yeah.
I don't think the Chiefs are even going to be a dynasty. They're going to be always in the run, but I don't think they're going to win like 5 championships. You know how people are crowning them, they're going to be back-to-back champions probably. Look at the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers were unbeatable the first, 9 weeks of last year. Look at them now.
Yeah.
2-3, and not much has changed from, people might go with injuries, but not much has changed, right? So it's just like, I agree with you. I don't believe in the curse. I think the curse is just a cop-out to your dissatisfaction.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies too, where because look, we talk about all this stuff amongst each other, but we also talk about it on social media, and the players see it too. And I think some of the players in these teams, they almost kind of internalize it too, like, oh man, maybe we are cursed. Maybe we are gonna get this lead and blow it, that stuff. Yeah. And it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecy things that we just have to get rid of. Because I personally, I think that's a loser's mentality. People like to say, oh, it's a loser's mentality to say that, oh, we've made strides even though we lost in this thing. Yeah, there are 30 teams in the MLB. Only one is gonna win. Yes, we didn't win at all, but to say that we haven't gone forward, especially since this was the first time since 2001 that we even made it to the NLCS, I think that's asinine. So there are things to take from it. A loser's mentality is to just be like, oh, well, we're just going to lose because that's what Atlanta always does. It's not within our destiny. We're cursed. I think that's BS. Yeah. The Buffalo Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost. That's a curse. So,
and then they never went back to the playoffs until I think 2017.
Yeah, that's a curse, not what we're going through.
So, real quickly before I move on to foosball, what's your optimism about the Atlanta Braves?
I'm really optimistic. I'm really optimistic because the stuff we did, especially down the stretch of the regular season and the playoffs, we did it with really young players. Basically, Mark Freeman, who's like the core of our team, is like the senior guy on the team. Yes, Markakis is older, but Markakis is good for your quality hits here and there, but he isn't. I wouldn't say he's the core of the team. Markakis could be gone in the next season because he has these 1-year contracts. Freeman is the core guy. He's 32, I think, 30, something like that. And he's the oldest one. Everyone else is young. Acuna is 22, I think. Albies is 23.
I think Ronald Acuna is 23. And then remember, we got those guys are long term.
Yeah. So if Acuna is 23, then Albies is 24 because I know there's like a year difference.
22.
Okay, so Acuna is 22, Albies is 23. The guys who started for us in the playoffs, Anderson, Kyle Wright, and not Soroka, Fried. Between the three of them, they have less than 3 years experience between the three of them, right? Like this is a young staff, and they're gonna get better. And we're gonna bring in Mike Soroka. Like we're good, man.
Do you think they're gonna re-sign Ozuna, or you think because of his performance, he's probably gonna demand a lot more money and go somewhere?
Yeah, I fear it's gonna be another Josh Donaldson situation because Josh Donaldson did really well last year on a 1-year contract, and then this year. He was demanding a lot of money. He ended up signing for the Minnesota Twins for like 40 million, I think. And we got Ozuna for 18 million in the same position. And Ozuna became the slugging champion this year for the National League. So
I guess the question I would ask though is for the Braves, what did you say the other gentleman was?
Josh Donaldson.
So would signing Acuna make more sense than re-signing Acuna for that? Ozuna, I'm sorry, for just so much money versus Donaldson, would that make more sense just based off of what Ozuna did, or?
You mean if they were available for the same amounts, would you rather sign Ozuna than Donaldson?
Yeah, so let's just say that Ozuna is demanding a good 40 million.
Yeah, Ozuna was good. It was really good. I don't know if I would, just because I think Ozuna is primarily a third baseman, right? And he's good at giving you your hits and your power hits and all that stuff. But from a fielding perspective, I don't think we need to splurge that much in a third baseman. I think Austin Riley can cover third base for much cheaper. Austin Riley's also a power guy, but I think his vision is off, right? Because when he makes contact, it's usually gone. But he has so much swing and miss stuff in his game that he really needs to clean that up. If he cleans it up, he could be one of the great sluggers. But since the National League is reverting back to the normal standard and not having universal designated hitter, I wouldn't think it's a good idea to re-sign Ozuna for like 40 million. Okay. Yeah, somewhere halfway, like 25, because we got him for 18 last year. 25. Something like that, I'd say yeah. I'd say yes. Splurge that little extra on him. 40 million is too much. Yeah.
He's probably going to demand more money, and he'll probably
he has to. He has to, right? I mean, he got the most home runs, the most RBIs this year. He kind of has to demand more.
So he'll be what's your prediction? What he'll be an Astro next year?
I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Marlin.
Okay.
Yeah, he would go back to the Marlins. The Marlins have a big upside too. Derek Jeter is doing a really good job with that team. So our division is going to be tough. But,
okay.
But I like the Braves' future.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, Rays and Dodgers, that's what's going on now. It was a good season. It didn't end the way we wanted, but that's how it rolls.
Hey, baseball, I heard it starts back up, what, in April, March?
Yeah, so spring, I almost said spring semester. This is spring
League?
Yeah, there's a term for it.
The spring league, no?
Spring training.
Spring training. Okay.
Spring training starts in February. And then usually the first game of the season is like the last week of March.
There you go. So it's only around the corner. And NBA is about to start up again. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
That's ridiculous. Anyways.
Anyway, so that's gonna be our last thing on non-football stuff, probably for the rest of the season. I might chime in with some soccer stuff here and there, but
we'll start watching hockey.
You know, I have friends who speak very highly of hockey. It just wasn't really my thing. Like, I used to live in Northern Virginia, and the Capitals were like, you know, the big thing there.
So I watched a few hockey games before. You want to know what screwed me up? I was like, wait, what's this three like periods thing? I was like, when the hell are they doing odd periods or innings or halves or that confused the hell out of me.
People do quarters, people do halves, these people do trimesters. All right.
Anyway,